Ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome you to Cayenne Wellness's Author's Corner. Today we welcome James Griffin III, author of Breaking Silence.
Thank
Welcome,
you.
James.
How you
How are
doing,
you?
Renee?
Good. How are
I'm
you?
good.
Okay. Um,
Yes.
so, I'd like to welcome you and to just give a little bio. James hails from, I almost said Wisconsin. No, it is Wisconsin, right?
Yeah, Wisconsin. Yep.
Wisconsin, Wisconsin, and it is currently 6 o'clock over there. So we won't take up too much more of your time. I know it's dinner time, but we want to welcome you, and we also just were eager to hear a little bit about your story.
All right. Well, thank you for having me. First of all, I want to say that I'm glad that I was asked to be on here to do this author's corner and then share some of my story. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna dive into my story, share some excerpts of the book, um, and so let me know when you're ready.
Take it away, James. We're ready for you.
All right. So in this chapter, this is I'm from the first chapter, and yeah, so it's the first chapter, the beginning, and I'm just going to give you guys an introduction of, how I found out I had sickle cell. So I had my first sickle cell crisis before I could walk, and they would continue from then on. A crisis is the hallmark of sickle cell. It could consist of several chronic pain. It consists of severe chronic pain in any location of the body, wherever blood flows, the chest, legs, arm, back, and so on. A crisis can be brought on by a decrease in oxygen levels in the body due to overexertion, temperature changes, fever, stress, high altitude, or dehydration. I was first diagnosed with sickle cell when I was 2 years old. At that time, no one in my family was educated or knowledgeable about sickle cell. However, after I was born, they would become students of sickle cell and come to learn about it through many trips with me to the hospital and doctor's office. Since I was too young to remember the specific details of how my sickle cell was discovered, I have called upon my mother to share her story of that day when we found out. So, this is my mother telling me how we found out. James was 2 years old when we found out that he had sickle cell. He was in his walker, bouncing around the house, playing like your typical toddler, when suddenly we heard a loud screaming and crying. My husband and I were sitting on the couch in the living room with our other two children as they played on the floor around him. After I heard James crying, I ran over to him to see what was wrong. Initially, I didn't notice anything, so I just held him in my arms to try and calm him down, but I couldn't. The screams continued to persist, so I looked him over again, and that's when I noticed his hand was visibly swollen. To me, it looked like a latex glove filled with water. When I saw James's hand puffy and swollen, the first thing that came to my mind was that he had accidentally banged his hand on the wall while he was playing around the kitchen. Oddly enough, I hadn't heard anything, so that made me think otherwise. Hours later, after the swelling went down, my husband and I decided we were going to take him to the hospital the next day so he could be evaluated by a doctor. In the doctor's office, we explained to the doctor what had happened and how we thought that James might have hit his hand on a wall while playing in his walker. By then, the swelling was completely gone down and there was no signs of a broken bone. So the doctor didn't feel the need to take any x-rays of the hand. Instead, the doctor decided to run some blood tests on him as a precaution. The next day, after the results came back from the blood test, we were instructed to schedule another appointment to follow up with the doctor regarding the results. In this appointment, the doctor broke the news to us that James had inherited the blood disorder, sickle cell anemia. So that was my mother sharing how they learned. Now I'm going to go back to me. Even though sickle cell was hard on me, I cannot fathom what they must have been going through as parents. To hear the word sickle cell and not know exactly what to expect must have been frightening and heartbreaking for them. For me, sickle cell would be a very long struggle filled with a lot of pain and a lot of questions. The most important question of all, of course, was why me? The answer to that question will never be known, but I do believe that it was just what God had in store for me. And if I didn't have the strength to handle it, He would not have placed it upon me. So that's um, a little bit of an intro for you about how I found out about sickle cell.
Sorry, I was on mute.
Okay, I was gonna say I couldn't hear you.
I, um, I thought about the initial diagnosis and how parents, how they have so many different mixed emotions of how, like, I read in your book that they didn't know they carried the sickle cell gene, and
Yes,
how they were both in the military, and they uh, joined their prospective jobs and married and had you, and that's how they figured it out. And then I think your mom mentioned at one point that her sister had passed from sickle cell disease, but she wasn't quite understanding what it all entailed because it was back in the 40s. So I
yes,
always think about not only you're so little and you're finding out, and how do you explain that to infants, as a child, a small child, and then them wrapping their mind around, okay, how do we tackle this? And I really like their approach. They're like, hey, we're going to be students of sickle cell, and we're going to learn everything we can, and just jump in feet first and make sure that you're having just as much of the same experiences as your siblings. So I really thought that was well delivered by your parents, so to speak, to make sure that they wanted to make sure that you weren't put in a box or anything like that, that you're going to live to your potential and not have, they didn't put any stipulations on you or any kind of asterisk by your name or anything. We have to treat you special. So I'm glad that they, even though they didn't know what to expect, they knew that how they were going to parent you.
definitely.
Yeah. And then as you get the diagnosis, obviously you're too young to really understand. And then
Uh,
you fast forward a little bit into adolescence. How does that sickle cell present itself to you from infancy into, say, elementary into junior high, high school? What was your experience like? Just kind of coming into being and acknowledging your sickle cell. What was your first real thoughts about, okay, this is something that's going to be with me forever. I need to figure out how to meet these challenges and rise above the pain and the stigma and figure out how to join this as part of my life and not fight it.
yeah. Well, early on, it was, you know, trips back and forth to the hospital. Right away, I knew like something was different about me. I had been in the hospital my whole life, so from a baby up until now, I still go to the hospital. So the more I would go to the hospital, and the more I would have these appointments, because I would have to see a specialist. The sickle cell clinic. I would go to the sickle cell clinic. All patients that were diagnosed in the state of Wisconsin, the hospital I was at would be seen yearly with the sickle cell clinic. And then, so during those times, they would always tell me about what I had. Like I had sickle cell. I had to make sure I drank a lot of water. Um, I started grasping what I had and how it was taking effect on my body, like around, I would say, 6 years old, 6 or 7. So like very early on, kindergarten, I didn't know it. Obviously, I would just go through these pain crises. But early on, like first grade and up, I would have to know how to take care of myself because I was at school alone. The teachers knew, but I ultimately had to know how I would feel. And so I just I just tried to handle it as best I could. The pain was always difficult for me as a child because, I run around like all the other kids and do everything they do. But then a week later, or maybe that night, I'm having pain because I'm doing too much and I'm not understanding, I can't do this like them, but I want to show them I could do this. So it was a lot of constantly learning and trying to understand as a child what exactly was going on inside my body. I know a lot of people who have sickle cell, we don't, like kids, we don't quite understand. We think they tell us, wear your socks, dress warm, you drink a lot of water, and we do that, and then we still get these crises, and it's like, oh, I got this crisis because I didn't wear socks. But a lot of different things can trigger a crisis in your body, so it's very difficult. But the support system I had always were there for me, always wanted to show me how to handle my sickle cell and always teach me early on. So I was very teachable as a child. I wanted to know, and they always had told me, like, you got to make sure you do this. And they were very protective of me as a family, as parents. So I always knew that, someone would be looking after me, but I ultimately had to understand and learn my body. So.
That's good. I think that's one of the things that we as warriors have to understand, that, as we're coming to terms with it, that we are our first advocates. And the more we know about our disease, the better it is that we can advocate for ourselves and teach others around us, which your story definitely is. Some people are forthcoming in the beginning when they have a
Uh-huh.
diagnosis, but I understand that from reading your book that you're apprehensive. And two things that I want to talk about: one, the the family dynamic, and two, you had a special nurse that was really transparent and authentic, and helping you walk through this journey. So just give us a little bit of background about the family dynamic, and how your mom is protective and your dad is a little bit more laid back, and they're two different perspectives and approach to how they were raising you, and how to tell or not tell uh, family and friends about your condition.
Okay. So yeah, in the book I said my mother and father were like night and day when it came to my my sickle cell, because my dad, he was so open about it. He would always speak up and say, "So what? Who cares that you have sickle cell?" So he didn't never hold back that I had sickle cell. I had friends who wanted to see me when I was sick, because like I said, as a child, I was in and out of the hospital. In my teen years, friends would come by my house all the time and come looking for me, and I always had an excuse where I was gone or I was out of town, or I had to do things. But one day my dad was home by himself and he said, "Oh, James is in the hospital, you can go see him." And so my dad never cared that I had sickle cell and would just tell everybody. For him, it wasn't a thing. He was, like I said, they both had military backgrounds, but he was just so, I guess, say strong, that he didn't mind sharing that I had sickle cell. He hated to see me sick, of course, in the hospital, and he didn't want to see me in the hospital as much. So he left it up to my mom's to come see me more often. But he came. He would be there when she wasn't able to be there for work, or just to pop in and show his support. But he never let it affect him that I had sickle cell, as far as telling people. And he actually had some other people on his side of the family who had trade and who had sickle cell. So he was well aware of what was going on as well too. Um, my mother, on the other hand, she would always keep it quiet. She didn't want anybody to know what was going on with us in our household. She was very private, like I was. And the minute I told her that, I didn't want anybody to know what was going on with me, she would just be like, okay, then I won't tell them. So anytime something came up, friends came by, she would say, "Oh, James isn't here. He's with his cousins," or, "He can't come out today." So she had her side of the story, and she would always listen to what I wanted. And that was the thing with my mother. She never wanted to see me not happy. So whatever made me feel happy and comfortable, she was okay with. And then as I got older, it got to a point where I started thinking, you know what, I should tell people. And she had the same idea, like that would be a great idea for you to. I'm not sure why you don't want to, but I respect your decision not to. And when I was ready to start talking to tell people, she said, "Oh, that's good you told somebody." So she was there to be supportive, but she was always bedside with me. I had a lot of times to spend with my mother, talking to her about my feelings and things I was going through, how I felt daily. So she was just as much into it as I was. And that's the thing about caregivers. They're always in it with us. We don't fight this alone. They are, as much as it is a part of us and we deal with it, they deal with it too, but they deal with it from a different perspective. And so it's just as harder on them too, because a lot of times my mother would say, James, I wish I could take the pain away from you. I wish I could carry that pain. So that's what a caregiver do. They don't think about themselves. They think about you first, and they want to help you, because until we're able to take care of ourselves when we're sick, we need help. It's like a baby, a child. We can't take care of ourselves. We need somebody to do it for us. And with sickle cell or chronic illness, that never goes away. Whether you're an adult, I need somebody to come over and help me get dressed because I'm having pain in my arms or pain in my legs. I can't get up. I need somebody to cook for me. So caregivers support you until you're able to care for yourself. And I had a great support system.
So how did you transition from I want to keep it to myself, your mom supporting that, to now I feel comfortable letting people know? Like, what was it, an overnight? It was a gradual. Like, did you have an epiphany? What was the turning point for you to say, I have to do this. I have to get out in front of this, and I want to make people aware and educate them.
Okay. Well, it was a gradual thing for me, because as I got older, I didn't do it till I was in my 20s and I was healthy enough. So 1998, hydroxyurea came out. So when I got on that medication, I didn't see the same symptoms. Like, I used to walk around with jaundice all the time, which means yellow eyes. If anybody listening don't know what that means, but yellowing of the eyes. So I used to walk around with that, and I was ashamed of having that. And so when I started taking the medication and I seen it helped me to open up more. And as I got older, I didn't want to just continue hiding this, because I felt like, I wasn't being my true self. I wanted to let people know what I was going through. I wanted people to be there for me. And the only way they could be there for me if I told them what was going on. When I started dating, I wanted to let people know, because eventually I wanted to be married and, go through all that. So I I had to be open about it, and I didn't want to hide it anymore because it was being too much. And I just felt like this is who I am. I have to be open. I have to share it. I have to be honest about it. And if someone doesn't accept me because of it, then it's
They're not for
it's
you.
yeah, it's not for me. I can move on to the next one. So, or like not be bothered with whether friends or whoever, family. But if they didn't accept me, then I knew that they wasn't supposed to be in my life. They wasn't meant to be in my life. So that's why I started speaking out. And as I got older as well, I knew that I had friends who may start having kids. Like, I was about 26, 27 when I spoke out and decided, kind of late for me, for most people. But
I was a little bit
I,
of a
I
late
knew
bloomer
that I had
myself.
friends who may start having kids or think about that, and I wanted to tell them exactly what was going on and prepare them. Like, you should get tested for the traits, so that if they had a kid and I didn't say anything, I would feel like, oh man, I let them down. I could have said at least this. So I just wanted to put that out there for them and just share my story. So that's why I
So not
decided to open up.
not only did you want to advocate for yourself, but you felt um, a calling to educate the general public as well,
Yes.
so they wouldn't have the potential. Um, I don't want to say it in a disparaging way, but so just that they knew the facts that if you test positive for sickle cell disease or trait, knowing that when you go into your dating life and your married life, the potential of having a child with disease. So you felt that on your heart that you wanted to make sure that there was awareness even at 26, because you knew the implications of having a disorder that makes life more challenging. I say more colorful.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
And
take us
that,
back to when I read, I think page 16, when you're talking about barriers and putting and the jaundice, because I definitely resonated with that. It was your secret is out when your eyes are jaundiced, right? The
yes.
bilirubin is high, so that creates the jaundice, the yellowing effect of your eyes. And I thought, oh wow, I remember, like, you can't keep it a secret if that's the first thing people see is your eyes, right? And you mentioned,
Uh-huh.
the eyes are a window to your soul, and you're like, there, it's a window to my illness, it's a window to my health. And I just thought, oh, a lot of warriors can identify with that, because you can't hide your eyes. You can't go around with blinders on, or dark glasses. And the jaundice will definitely out you even when you don't want to be
Yeah,
out
that's
and so proactive.
so yeah, with the whole jaundice, um, you do see it in the eyes, and so I couldn't hide that part, but I made excuses as to why it was jaundice. So I didn't tell anybody, even though they could see something was wrong. I didn't tell anybody that I had sickle cell, even with the jaundice. And as a teen, most people would be curious and be like, "Oh, you smoke? Do you smoke? Do you drink?" So it was just like, "Oh yeah, I smoke," being cool, knowing I didn't smoke.
The
So
stories
I
you
was just
tell.
yeah, so it's like, oh yeah, I do, or oh yeah, I have like it just gets like that sometimes. So I wasn't honest about having jaundice. I never really wanted people to know, but they always saw it, and I would get picked on for having jaundice too. So it was hurtful to see um, the eyes being jaundice on a daily basis, because a lot of times when you're going into a crisis, it's jaundice, and then when you're coming out of a crisis until your hemoglobin goes up, it's still jaundice. So for me, it was like an everyday thing almost. It's just some days were lighter than others. And I knew, like, when I was drink water, sometimes it would help right away and make it look like it was a little bit clearer. So I always had to be mindful to carry water with me or get to a water bubble if I was at school so that people wouldn't know. But being teased for having jaundice was very hurtful, and it could affect your self-esteem. And it did that for me too, because I was constantly aware of jaundice, and I always had attention on me that I didn't want to have attention on me. So uh, until I got on medication, then it
That
would
was
continue
helping.
like that until it would continue with me being hiding it or just making up things, or people thinking I had tints on my glasses when I was in school. So it was just a lot of different things that I said when it was came to jaundice.
So hydroxyurea was really one of helping you spring you into your advocacy and your awareness,
Yes,
spreading the awareness to other people. So tell us about taking hydroxyurea.
hydroxyurea worked for me right away. I noticed immediately that um, it took a while. So they check your blood counts, and they have you start you in the low doses until they feel like your body is accepting it, and they don't want to. It's something that they don't want to give too much too soon. So it's always a gradual dose. But when I would took the hydroxyurea, I noticed, okay, my eyes cleared up, so something must be working. And then the thing that surprised me was after taking the hydroxyurea, that whole year I went without being admitted into the hospital.
Wow,
So
that's
I was
beautiful.
like, yes,
Hmm.
I can. It's almost like being a brand new person. I'm like, I can go out, be out for long hours of the day. I don't get sick. I don't have to worry about being in the hospital. I can hang out longer with friends. A lot of things that I wanted to do, just going to the mall, and not being able to make the movies, I could do now. And so I was happy to be able to do that because of the medicine. And I was just had to stay on top of taking the medicine and going in to see my doctor. And just making sure that I stayed on top of that because the levels are important when you're taking the medication. So I had to make sure I went to my appointments. But it was good to see that. And after my first crisis of being on hydroxyurea, I went back to the same hospital because I grew up in the same hospital. I always went to the same one. The nurses there who would see me in the emergency room said, "Where have you been?" And I'm just, and I said, "Oh, I've been taking hydroxyurea, so this medicine has helped. That's why I haven't been in here." And they were surprised that they hadn't seen me because as people with sickle cell, we get comfortable, or the doctors and nurses get comfortable seeing us there because it's frequent for us. We can't control how our crisis affect us. We can't control um, the days that the amount of times we go into pain crisis. We can't control any of that, and it's unpredictable. So just being in the emergency room, something we rely on a lot, we get to know doctors, nurses when we go to the same hospital. So they knew I wasn't there, and just being able to tell them that, I was on this medication, it's helped me stay away for a year, was good for me, and I knew it was working.
Okay, we have some questions from the audience here. The first one is, um, what part of the book did you have the hardest time writing?
Oh, part of the book. As I would say, the part about, you know, um, being a kid. It was probably the hardest part for me to write about, just because it was bringing back memories,
Mm,
and just knowing that, my family, it was a heavy burden. I feel like it was a heavy burden on them. So just being a kid with sickle cell, and like, mom plans something and it's time to go, and then I get sick, it was hard. So I knew, like, that time period in my life was definitely hard for me. It brought back a lot of memories about me, and it brought back a lot of situations that I was in, and just remember being teased and bullied about having sickle cell. The eyes were a part of it. The jaundice was a part of it.
mhm.
So I would say just being a kid was probably the hardest part. Reflecting back on that.
Yeah, because you're an adult thinking back to, being a child, having adolescence, all that goes along with that. And
Yes.
then you have a chronic condition on top of that. Like, how are you being perceived? How, I mean, you're just trying to live your best life, right? And
Yep.
here's sickle cell knocking on the door every now and again to remind you, hey, I'm around. And so, as a, it, as not only as a physical disease, it's a disease of the mind too, right? You have to
Yeah.
constantly navigate your mental health, right?
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about how the challenges in adolescence helps you in your adulthood, kind of bridging the gap between not knowing what to do, not knowing what to say, not saying too much, not saying too little, not being able to be your authentic self until you come to terms with it. And now you are an adult now, and you say, "Oh, looking back then, wow, that was a lot." Like you said, you as a warrior think, "Wow, this is a challenge for my parents. This is a challenge for my friends, my siblings." And we don't want to be a challenge or a burden to them, right? So
Right.
then how did that make you feel emotionally, mentally, that that was part of your life, and to see the effects on your family, because it does take a toll.
It was hard because I never understood what they was going through, and I know, like, because of my illness, like, having sickle cell, and this is what people don't understand, it affects the finances of the family.
Mm-hmm.
So caring for someone, trips back and forth to the hospital, having to borrow money to get prescriptions or borrow money to have food on the table sometimes, it was hard. And I feel like because both of my parents wasn't able to work like they should, one of my parents my mother had to stay home. And oftentimes when it came to her job, she was the one who would eventually leave her job to take care of me while my dad worked.
Mm-hmm.
So at times we were in the house with one income. So it was hard on us. and just knowing that was hard to deal with at times, and knowing like, it's I don't want to be a burden. So everything I do, I have to think I want to stay healthy enough so that I'm not in the hospital, so that we can have things, so that we can go places, so that my brothers and sisters don't have to feel like, what's wrong this time, because
Mm,
I can
yeah.
come home, go to the hospital, come home, and be right back in the hospital. That's just the way this illness works. So that was difficult. Um, but like I said, they were always supportive of me. When I was older, they would be the ones going to the grocery store or picking up my
Mm,
medications for me, or the ones taking me to the hospital when they started driving. So it was a collective unit, and I think that brought my family together just by me having it, because we learned how to be stronger together. um, they developed empathy for others. They saw what I went through, so they naturally had a caring for others. And like, I think it helped my family, because when you have the sickle cell and you have someone who's going through something, whether it's sickle cell or not, it usually tears a family apart.
yeah.
The dad either takes off, or like one parent can't handle it, and it just tears the family apart. But in my situation, it brought us closer together, and I think that's why we're so close today as a family, because of what I went through, because they knew like how strong we are. We had to take care of each other, so I think that was important. um
That's such a
for me to go through.
inspiration. What was your inspiration for writing the book?
My inspiration for writing a book was to see change. I wanted to make people aware of sickle cell, because I didn't see anything about sickle cell growing up. I felt like I was all alone, and I knew I wasn't. Now I know I wasn't alone. It was several others. I would see them only in clinics, but when you're by yourself and they're not in your school, you know,
Hmm.
they're not in your church, they're not in your community. You don't see them. You feel like you're all alone, and when you're in that pain, you definitely feel like you're all alone. So I wanted to write a book that to show people, hey, you're not by yourself. I'm going through this with you, and you can overcome that, because there was no book out there for sickle cell. And another thing that got me, I was 18 years old, and I had a nurse, one of my doctors. I liked her. She was a good doctor, and she treated me well, took care of me well. And one day I had troubles going to the ER where they wouldn't see me. I had my first time experienced trouble with the ER where they made me wait. And then when they got me back, they didn't give me the right amount of medication. And so I told her the next time I seen her in her office, and she said to me, well, James, you know that like uh, patients drug seek and things like that. So that got me to understand like this is happening on a normal basis. And
Mm,
for those people who are not getting the right medication, and who the doctors don't feel comfortable, whether they have tattoos or not, they don't feel comfortable with that patient, they're not going to treat that patient well. For me, I mostly got treated well, so I was able to get in, get out. But through one experience or another, I had um, faced stigma. And so I was
yeah.
like, I want to speak up for those people so that, they can get the medication that they need. They can get the treatment, because I know this is happening now and I see it. And so I want to make sure that they're getting treated right.
Yeah, for the most part, we're treated well in adolescence. Pediatric care
Yes.
is stellar, but transitioning to adult care can be a little bit of a bit of a tightrope there, a bit of a rude awakening. And so you had that unfortunate experience of having being under medicated, because that's true in our community. We get a lot of under medication, and how when how the doctor feels versus treating the patient, right?
Yes.
Because it's not necessarily about their feelings, but at the end of the day, they're the ones administering the medicine, right? So we have to have
Right.
that give and take. So I'm glad you're able to talk to your physician, saying, "Hey, speak up about that," because, like you said, if it happened to me, I know it's happening to others,
Yeah.
and we do have that circulating in our community, that misnomer that we're drug seeking, and
Yeah.
so I'm glad that you were able to just really have that. I mean, that took courage to even address her, right? Because you
Yeah.
could have just cowered down and said, or you could have, been aggressive and said, this, I'm angry, I'm upset about this, and approached it in a different way. But this is awesome that you were able to have a little conversation with her and speak to what was on your mind, and have an understanding, and broaden her awareness, because she obviously thought that she educated you,
Yeah,
saying that about the drug seeking behaviors, right?
you're
So
right.
it says, will you be writing another book?
Yes, I want to write another book, but not on the topic of sickle cell. It's gonna be a different type of book. So I'm still working on the thoughts and collecting
Okay.
ideas for it. But yes,
uh, so we don't get a sneak peek, or you're still formulating the thoughts.
yes,
How
yeah.
long did it take you to write Breaking Silence?
So that book took me 2.5 years, and then
Wow.
yeah, 2.5 years. So I was just writing every day, and I had a couple mishaps with writing the book. Like one day I went to the library and left my flash drive when I first started. I left it in the computer, and I went back to the library and it wasn't there.
Oh
Um,
no.
yeah, so I had to start back over, and I was struggling with deciding what to write. It was so much stuff I wanted to write. Um, but I just continued to stay with it. I sat down every day and I wrote when I could, and when I couldn't, then I just didn't. I just left it alone. But when I could write and I had an idea, I just let the pen flow and just kept
Yes.
writing, and yeah, and decided to put it into a book once I got enough things journaled, written on in notebooks, and then I decided to sit at a computer and type it and make it a book.
That's awesome. I know that I always say that it's like birthing a baby, right? When you
Yes,
are making that long bread, you gotta proof it. It's gotta rise. It takes a lot out of you, and I like that what you said about letting it flow naturally. If it wasn't right for that moment, you put the pin down and wait until you were inspired again. So,
yes.
do you think your next book will be fiction, nonfiction? What do you prefer, fiction,
Oh,
nonfiction?
nonfiction. It's definitely
Nonfiction.
nonfiction. Yeah.
Uh huh. And
It's
who are your some of your favorite authors?
some of my favorite authors. Well, I could say some books I like. Like I like some of the books 50 Cent writes. So he
Oh,
has
I didn't
he
I didn't realize he was an author. You'll have to let us
yeah, he
know
has a book
some of
with
the.
Robert Greene, which is one of my favorite authors. He has like the 48 Laws of Power. But Robert Greene, and
Oh,
50
okay.
him and 50 Cent has a book together. I like nonfiction books, and they're usually classified as self-help or what is it, personal improvement books.
All
So I
right.
like reading those type of books. Uh, yeah, so my favorite author, I would say one of them is Robert Greene, definitely.
Now we have a comment here from Boss Lady. It says, "Hello, James. You are brave. My daughter has sickle cell disease, and knows that it is rough at times." And Etta was just giving you her support and saying hello, Etta Carter.
Hi, Ada. I know who that is.
So, would you like to read a little bit more about your another excerpt from your book?
Yeah, I'll go to school. So just being in
Okay,
school, I'll read an excerpt about being in school.
perfect.
All right. So this is chapter 3. It's and the name of the chapter is called School. Back when I was in elementary school, I could remember being absent from school for weeks at a time. I would be in school for a week or a month, then a crisis would hit me, and I would have to miss school for a week or so. My sickle cell had caused me to be in and out of the school regularly, and my teachers all took this into account as a legitimate excuse in regards to my attendance. Before the start of every school year, my mother would be very vocal in communicating to all my teachers, my counselors, and my principals about health. And so everyone was well informed about the possibility of me missing school. There were also certain accommodations that were made to prevent me from getting sick at school. I was allowed to carry a water bottle, go to the bathroom when I needed to, and rest in gym class. Pain episodes were unpredictable, so everyone had to be aware of that and understand how it could affect my attendance. But my attendance wasn't the only thing they needed to be aware of. They also needed to be alert for any sudden changes in my behavior. Stroke and acute chest syndrome are both serious complications of the condition and can occur in children as young as 6. Everyone knew if I was in pain not to hesitate to send me to the office so I could call home and be picked up from school. At least once a month, I had to visit the school secretary because of a crisis. No matter how it was triggered or what part of my body was affected, I needed to follow the same routine. I would let my teacher know, and she would send me down to the office where I would tell the secretary that I wasn't feeling well. She would hand me the telephone so I could call home. At this point, my mother was working from home as a child care provider, so she was always there to accept my calls. When she picked up the telephone, I would begin to tell her I didn't feel good, I was sick, and I needed to come home. She would ask me, "James, what's wrong?" I would say to her, "Mama, my back is hurting now." She would ask, "Can you stick it out and finish the day or wait until after lunch and see how you feel?" My mother always tried to get me to stay in school because my parents were big on school and they cared immensely about our education. When I told her I couldn't stay any longer because my back was hurting too bad and I couldn't sit still, she would say to me, "Okay, well, I will tell him to send you home." I would hand the secretary the telephone and she would hang up the call and call a bus so I could be dropped off at home. The conversation between my mother and me only lasted about 2 minutes, but it was long enough to determine whether or not I was staying in school. When I was on the telephone, the principal, Mr. Robinson, would always be looking on from behind his desk in his office. He understood my condition very well and told me one day he had a family member who was facing the same battles as me, but I never know who it was facing, but I never know who. I was very fortunate he knew about my condition throughout my schooling. Most of my teachers never had a clue what sickle cell was, but his compassion and understanding worked in my favor. And so that's another part of the book. I'm just talking about meeting one of the principals at my school, and then just
I was following along with you there. So it was nice to have that support because we never, like you said, we never know who's in our corner or how they can be a benefit to us because we don't know the history, what's the history of someone else and their family. So it was nice that he was able to share that with you. And I'm sure that had brought you some kind of comfort to know that at least he knows that, because we get the faking, we're lazy, but at least we know that when we do come across someone that's positive and can help us, that it really lifts us up and helps us continue on. Did he have any like words of wisdom? Anything that encouraged you specifically?
well, he didn't really. He was very close to my mother. Would speak to my mother and just um, understood
Support.
her and supported her. Yeah, because he
Okay,
knew.
great.
But he just had. It was just that not feeling sorry for me, but just understanding empathy for me.
Yes.
And knowing like just to watch out for me and informing the teachers and to know that I was really in pain. So that was he was still a principal, so he didn't really say much, but I could
In his
tell that
interaction.
yeah, with with his interaction, but I could tell that um, he was more supportive of me than other kids. So he always wanted me to do the best,
Yeah. Where can we
because of that.
purchase your book, James?
Oh, the book can be purchased on Amazon.
All
Yeah.
righty. That's good.
And I have excuse me if I miss over some words. I haven't read it in a while,
Oh,
so this is my first time I
that's
get
okay.
back to it, and
We're
I'm
humans.
excited.
This is live and
I'm
living
excited
color.
about reading it. Yeah, so
No worries. No worries. I know it can be a challenge to read and have an audience at the same
Yes.
time, and trying to get the the right cadence, the right balance. So no worries there. Is that, I mean, we you brought the book alive as you're reading it. Are there any other parts of the book that you would like to read?
Yeah, I'm gonna go back into yeah, I can read some more of the book. So I want
While
to talk
you're
about
oh, I'm
what's that?
sorry to interrupt you. Once you're done reading, I really would like the audience for you to share them about your journey into school and work.
Okay, so yeah, I'm gonna stay in school because I want to talk about one of the teachers that was there for me, and then I'll go into one of the next chapters I want to go into is the dealing with pain. So being absent from school never had a negative effect on me when it came to my grades because I love school. I love to read and I love learning new things. My favorite subjects were math and reading, and I can catch on and learn new things quickly. My mother constantly told me I was very smart because I would always finish my homework with no help and get good grades on all my assignments. When I was in the hospital, it became a normal routine for me to finish my homework there. It was something I didn't have to think about twice or have to be forced to do. Once I returned to school, I was never teased or made fun of by the other students. They always just asked me, "Where have you been?" and said they were glad to see me back. In the classroom, my teachers never shared my health with the class or treated me any different from the other students. I was expected to complete all the same assignments and tests, and I received the same punishments. My all-time favorite teacher was my sixth grade teacher, Mr. Williamson. He was very funny. He seemed to care the most about his students, and he always kept me included in activities while I was out sick. I remember one day when I was absent from his classroom and sick in the hospital with pneumonia, he came to visit me. Without any kind of notice, he stopped in my hospital room and surprised me with a visit. I had no idea he was coming, so the look on my face said it all. When I saw him walking through the door, my eyes got as big as an owl because I was so shocked. I also felt a little embarrassed because I was caught in the middle of eating a cherry popsicle, so my mouth was all covered in red. I didn't know if I should continue eating it or toss it, but Mr. Williamson just grinned and waited for me to finish. He came later in the evening around the time visiting hours were winding down, so I was not expecting anyone at all by then. But even if I had been, out of all the people I could think of, it was probably the last person I would expect to come visit me. Not because I did not think he cared about me as a student, but because I did not know that he cared that much as a teacher. It never would have dawned on me a teacher of mine would come to visit me while I was sick in the hospital. So I was delighted to see him there and enjoyed his company. Mr. Williamson stayed for at least an hour sitting in the reclining chair next to me, talking. His stay felt like it went by in a flash because there were no words, no introductions, interruptions from the nurses, or no nurses aside aides. And to my surprise, my IV didn't even beep once or make a sound. The only noise I heard came from the TV that was on in the background. Before I knew it, it was already time for him to go, and he was packing his things to leave. That was when he told me that my classmates were all waiting to see me come back to class and hope that I felt better real soon. That put a huge smile on my face and made me feel good inside. As he stood up to leave, he opened the bag he had brought in with him and pulled out a official USA Olympic basketball cap. He flicked it open, placed it on top of my head. Then he said, "James, this is yours, champ. Now get better." Wow, I couldn't believe it. I was so happy I continued to thank him and I shook his hand goodbye. For the rest of the school year, that night stuck in my mind because it meant so much to me. By the time I got back to school, I wasn't sure if anyone in the classroom even knew about it, but I never mentioned a thing. What I took away from that night was that he cared about me, not only as a student, but as an individual. He didn't have to come see me, but he did anyway. Outside of my family, Mr. Williamson was the first person ever to visit me in the hospital and the only teacher who ever visited me in the hospital. like footprints in the sand that left a lasting impression on me. So that was me talking about one of the teachers.
Whew. Yeah, it's like you they're almost in, I wouldn't say not human, but they, you only see them in a school setting, and for him
Yeah,
to take out the time to come down there and spend that hour with you, it was like gold.
it,
It was like you're seeing a superstar, seeing him in a whole different light, right?
it was, and the fact that he brought me a gift and I wasn't expecting it, it was like a basketball cap. uh, so he brought me one of those, and just like he was always there to help me out. He was
Well,
there
that,
in
what a way to
classroom.
lift your spirits.
Yeah, he lifted my spirits, and I was shocked when he came to see me because nobody outside of my family came to see me in the hospital, and to think a teacher would come up to the hospital and see me
Mm.
um, was surprising. And like teachers shape kids' lives, and that teacher stuck in my mind for the rest of my school year, for the rest of
Mm.
um,
Well,
going
here
through
it is.
school.
You're an adult, and we're still talking about him.
Yeah, I
So
never had
it's
a
made
teacher
a
like him, and if I could have
lasting impression.
definitely, if I could have
That's
a
awesome.
teacher like that, my whole, like throughout all of my years, it would be great. But like he was definitely important in my life, and definitely was there to uplift my spirits in the time when I was sick in the hospital.
Oh, that's awesome.
And not to share
So,
anything with the class either. So he never shared anything with the class, and that was I respected that teacher. I respected him.
did you ever visit him after you graduated? Did you keep in contact?
The funny thing is, my brother had a class. So my brother's was in college, and then his teacher was him. They were both in a college class together. So he was going on for something else, and so I ended up. He told me like, James, your teacher is a my classmate in school. So this is years after
That's
he got out
awesome.
of school. He went into something else, and him and my brother were in the same classroom, and so I ended up seeing him eventually at a basketball game.
That's awesome. It's nice to see them
Yeah, staying
outside
in
of
contact.
school. They're like, "Wow, you're a real human."
Yeah. And to recognize, like, he still looked the same, like I still recognized him. So it was funny
Yeah.
to actually see him outside of the class. And he did get the book. He told me he got the book, and he enjoyed the book as well.
That's
So
good.
yeah,
That's always good when you can, after you write the book, and there's pivotal moments in your life, and important people that you write about in your book, and the fact that they get to see that they made a difference in their lifetime. Some people, that touch us, they don't get to see how they formed us and changed us through their positive interaction with us. So that was awesome that you were able to connect with him later and life, and he was able to get your book. So that's just pretty awesome.
definitely. Because
The
time is the most valuable thing we can give. And for him to give his time and after hours after school, it was definitely important. It was like I was happy I got the hat. It wasn't even about the hat.
It's the
And I recognize
experience,
this.
right?
Yeah, I recognize this as why I was in that moment. It wasn't about the hat. It was just someone showing up for me in the
Mm,
time of need. So, and
yes,
giving their
and someone
time,
you didn't expect.
and someone I didn't expect. Yes.
Well, that's so when you're having experiences with school, adolescence. Now you're getting into. Uh, are you going to college? Are you going to learn a trade? What were your thoughts, and what were your experiences from adolescence into young adulthood? And you touched earlier on about your dating life. So tell us a little bit about your decisions on how did sickle cell affect your decisions on your work life, your education, your college life.
It definitely affected all three of those areas you just named. So, it affected my school. Like after high school, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, so I just went to school for graphics art because that was one of my fun classes. my elective classes my senior year. So I took that and I didn't know what to do because I knew sickle cell would limit me. I always, like every other child, I'm sure, wanted to play sports growing up. I wanted to play sports. I even went to try out for the basketball team, knowing that it would not be possible for me at the time because I was just in and out of crisis and it was just too much of my body. And I knew I couldn't do that. So I was just not sure what I wanted to do. I just went for graphics art. So then when I got into college, you know, I would miss days in college, but I was up front. The second I got into college, I was up front with all the professors, even though I didn't tell anybody in my circle as far as friends, relationships. I didn't tell them I had sickle cell. I always told the people that either I worked for or school teachers just because, they needed to know that I wasn't just not showing up because my grades was important and I wanted to go to college and, earn a diploma. Um, so I told one of my teachers, I told all my teachers I had sickle cell. And so when I was out, they knew and they would allow me to come in for night classes and take classes. But it definitely affected what I went for. So I decided to go to a technical school. And once going to technical school, I got the diploma, but I couldn't do it because the work was too physical on my body. It was a lot of bending. It was long hours. So running a print press. So from 12-hour days, I couldn't do that. So I felt like I went to school and I just wasted time pretty much because I wasn't able to do what I went to school for. And
But the
yeah,
knowledge, the knowledge, that's never a
yeah.
waste. Knowledge is never a waste, right? But I
So
can understand how you would feel like, oh, okay, maybe I can't complete this journey in the way that I expected to. So, what led you ultimately to say, hey, I need to figure out something else? Because you knew the effects on your body. How did you transition into another field?
well, it took me a while. I struggled with that. So I worked different jobs, a
Hmm.
lot of different jobs, customer service jobs. I was always wanted to be around people. So I just decided to work a lot of different jobs, customer service jobs. And the reason why I worked so many jobs is because once I was at one job for a long time. If I was there too long and I would get sick, eventually I would just have to leave because
Hmm.
you know, they wanted me there and they didn't understand my health was what to why I was getting sick. And some jobs was about production. So, you know, they needed production out of
Yeah.
employees.
So sometimes it's not always a reasonable accommodation that they can
Yeah, so
offer.
they never understood that part about it. Even though I would bring in the doctor's excuse, they never understood that part about it. So I had to continually, gradually learn new things and see what type of job I wanted to work or what where I wanted to go. And I think a lot of people with sickle cell struggle with that. I see so
Yes.
many people who want to
Yes.
work, but they can't work. It's people who go to school for nursing and like all type of professions, but they can't do it on a regular basis. So it's almost like it's a depression that sets in. That's when it plays on your mental and you go back and forth and it's an internal battle because you're like, I'm doing all of this. I'm trying to stay healthy. I want to go to school. I want to be independent. Yet I'm having this setback all the time, this obstacle. So it was definitely a struggle, a battle, but I ended up coming to like a conclusion. I have to find something where I'm allowed to have freedom and I'm allowed to take off days and I'm allowed to set my schedule. So I got into working in events. So working for different sports teams, Phoenix Suns, Milwaukee Bucks. And then from that, I carried that on. And then I just, now I'm in nursing. So I went back to school to be a medical assistant. So now I'm doing that because I understood that part of my body. I understood, like the medical terms. I just felt it was easy for me to go into that. But I set my schedule. So any job I had, I found out it's best for me to have a job where I can set my schedule and be allowed to miss days or take days off or not be there all the time. So it was just figuring out what exactly I could do.
Good. And so, how did you eventually meet your wife?
So I met her out. I met her out one night with a group of friends, and you know, I just talk to her. And then I end up, like just meeting her out, talking to her. I thought she was cool. So um, this is when I was 26, no, 28. I was 28. So, I thought she was cool. And then we kind of hit it off. And the one thing I did right away, well, it took me a little bit, but I was open about having sickle cell with her. So I didn't wait as long as I did with others, or where I didn't say something to any others. This one I decided to tell I had sickle cell, and she was okay with it. And I find out a lot of people are okay with it once I tell them. They just want to know more about it and want to understand it, but she was okay.
Good, good, good. Because I think that a lot of people think they can't have a professional life, they can't have long-term meaningful relationships, they can't be married, they can't have children. So it's nice that you write about that in your book, and you also let them know it's not without challenges, but it can be done. We just have to do it differently.
Uh-huh.
So we are able to
Yes.
maintain relationships. We are maintaining a job and a career. And so, what's next for you?
Next, I want to continue, like I want to write another book, and I want to continue to speak out, advocate for sickle cell, and just travel, do some traveling, do more traveling, and just spend time with my family. That's about it.
Oh, I
So,
love it. I love it. That's awesome. That is awesome.
yeah. I want to say
So,
something real quick. You touched on it.
yeah,
It is important. Once you have your health under control, then you can do the things you want to do. But it's first learning your body and getting your health under control so that you can. Because I don't want people to feel like they can't do anything because they have sickle
exactly.
cell. I don't want sickle cell to define people. That's why I speak out about sickle cell. I don't want it to even define me. Um, so you can do a lot of things. I think it just holds us back and at times because we're unsure. We don't know how we're going to get through this pain and do everything. But you just have to continue to learn your body and get your health under control and then see what's best for you. Because there are people who are nurses, there are
Hmm.
people who are chefs,
Doctors.
there are doctors. Yeah, so it's a lot of people out there. So if you look at others doing things, that's that's a symbol of hope for you. You can get there.
Hmm.
You just have to get your health under control and be mindful of your health and what works for you.
You touched on
So
something very important. You said this is something, we can look forward to these different careers, but we also have to know our body first, right? Because even
yes.
though you can have a consistency, you can have that little blip, up and down, where there's maybe a more of an acute challenge with your condition. And it is great that you're saying that, hey, don't let sickle cell stop you. Just make sure you learn your body, learn your triggers, and also go for the stars. Don't let
Mhm.
sickle cell define you, right?
Right, because I'm 42 years old, and the medication now, I only had hydroxyurea, and it helped me.
Hmm.
But if I would have had it sooner, I would have been able. I feel like I could have started sooner and finding out what I wanted to do. I would have been healthier. But I'm always at where I'm supposed to be. You know,
Life's a
um,
journey.
yeah, life is a journey, so I never worry about looking back at the past. But I know, like the future for those who live with sickle cell is getting better, is becoming better because they are coming up with medications. They do know about sickle cell. I think the power of the internet has accelerated our stories and has shown people, look, this is what we're going through. We need help.
Hmm.
We need uh, the awareness is out there now because of the internet, but we need help. So I think the power of internet has helped us, and it's technology is there, so they're working on cures. So I think there is, well, I not think I know there is hope for the future and hope for those who living with sickle cell. And I want to see everybody cured, and I want to see people living and thriving, not just to the point where, okay, you're taking this medication, pain medication every day, and you're not in pain and you're not in the hospital. That's not living. You're just being comfortable. They're just keeping you comfortable. I want to see people where they're able to go out and work and travel and do things with their family and not have to worry about, oh, if I go to the hospital, who's going to watch my kids? Or if I go to the hospital, I can't do this, or being afraid to go to the hospital because they know they have to work to make money. So it's about continue to share our stories, continue to raise awareness so that people with sickle cell can live and thrive with sickle cell.
And in closing, if you could read on page 134 in the end, I think that would be a good conclusion for us. How you kind of sum it up and wrap up your journey thus far.
Okay, so I'll read 134. So this is you want me to read the whole conclusion like this, or just
Just the
page
last
134?
paragraph, like in the end.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right. In the end, I knew I could no longer be silent about the thing I cared about the most, helping others like myself who felt alone as they suffered in silence, praying for change. I knew if I ever wanted to see a change in the world, first I had to change and open up. One day it finally dawned on me because I knew the impact of speaking out about sickle cell was far more beneficial than me choosing to remain silent. I had been in the dark for far too long about my illness. Deep down, I knew if I spoke out about it, I would finally see there was a light at the end of the tunnel for me. I hope by sharing my story with you, I have opened up your eyes to see the seriousness of this chronic illness. My intention is not to have you feel sorry for me, but rather to inform you and educate you about the significance of sickle cell by giving you a glimpse into my life. You can see what it is like for people to live with this debilitating illness and the challenges we face each day. Throughout this journey, I have learned a lot about myself, including that I can no longer be silent about the things that matter most to me, especially if I want to change the way other people view sickle cell. While there still may be some people who continue to ignore this chronic illness, I truly believe that one day we will reach everyone who matters the most. With the grace of God and advanced medicine, we will have a cure for sickle cell. Until then, I will continue to smile, fight, and live my life to the fullest each day because I know that even behind the darkest clouds, the sun is still shining bright as ever.
Oh, I think that's a perfect ending to our session today. That I just
Thank you.
when I read that, you brought everything up and just just had a good summary of like there will be challenges. I have to speak out about this. This is not for you to feel sorry for us, right? To feel sorry
Right.
about yourself. It's for you to to elevate and educate and
Yeah,
bring that awareness out, and that that even on your most challenging days, the sun will shine.
definitely. And that's for everybody out there. The pain is only temporary, so you will have pain, but just know that you can get through it. Nothing lasts forever. So you just have to stay strong, have a good support system around you, and continue to fight each day for your health. You want to be healthy.
Yes.
Continue to think about your health so that you can live healthy. I want to say something quick too, that having sickle cell, the one thing I know we all want is independence.
Yes. Yes.
So since we come into this world as a baby, we're being taken care of. We have
Mm-hmm.
support systems that's protective of us. We
Mm-hmm.
want to work. We just want independence because we want to be normal and healthy like everybody else. And
Exactly.
that's our hardest battle, is getting to independence. No one wants
Yes.
to be
And
taken care of forever. We all want to be uh, not just exist in this world, but have a purpose and just live in this world. So and do what we want to do and live. So I think
you don't want to
independence is the
be
one.
put in a box.
Yeah, we don't. We want the independence. That's why we
Yes.
fight like we do.
That's
We
right.
fight for our
I mean,
health
that's
and,
we call ourselves
yeah,
warriors for a reason, right? Because some days are we just got to
definitely
put that
yes,
extra effort in, that the good fight. I always call it the good fight.
yes, definitely. I like that.
Yeah. Well, we sure appreciate you sharing your book with us today, and if I'll just look in the chat to see if we have any parting questions here or comments. Boss Lady says, "Good for you, James. That was great, and that you're brave." And let's see here. I don't believe we have any more questions or comments. So, James Griffin, author of
Breaking
Breaking
Silence.
Silence. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm always honored when you guys call, especially Cayenne Wellness. I'm always glad to share my story and hope that it would help somebody just a little bit to get through their struggle. So thanks. I appreciate the time.
The pleasure was all ours. Thank you, James.
All right.
I'll see you in the next meeting.
Yes, definitely. All right.
It's a small world.
Sounds good. Yeah.